Having an uncomfortable baby is hard. It's conflicting, often leaving you second guessing and stealing joy from such a precious time in your lives. This week, I'm joined by the wonderful, compassionate Josie.
Thank you for having me on, firstly. It's so lovely to see Alfie. I'm actually so pleased that you brought him. Unfortunately, Otto was born early in quite traumatic circumstances in terms of the fact that we both became incredibly unwell.
If you'd given me all the knowledge and explained everything that you've explained to us, but I hadn't had the support alongside, I would have found that so much harder. Hello, I'm Pip, and welcome to the Midwife Pip podcast, the home of expert information and real chats on all things pregnancy, birth, and beyond. Having an uncomfortable baby is hard. It's conflicting, often leaving you second guessing and stealing joy from such a precious time in your lives. Terms like colic, reflux, and allergies just lead to more confusion about a topic that can leave parents desperate and babies crying excessively and sleeping minimally. I know how challenging this can be because I've just been there. This week, I'm joined by the wonderful, compassionate Josie from Positively Parenthood, who scooped myself and Alfie up when we were desperately searching for a solution to our uncomfortable baby. Having previously had a career in childcare, Josie has always had an interest in ensuring the best care and support is in place in all walks of life for children and their families. In 2021, Josie had a baby boy who, after being born early in quite traumatic circumstances, went on to develop severe silent reflux. Josie decided to change career paths after her experiences in that first year of her son's life, and now works alongside the wonderful Heidi Scudder, supporting parents of babies who are not having the easiest start in life. What started as reflux support, due to the vast number of clients they were receiving, has developed into a whole new platform, a branch of Positively Parenthood known as Your Comfortable Baby. So welcome, Josie, and thank you so much for joining me and Alfie on the
Yeah, thank
podcast
you.
today. I was just saying to Josie before we started recording that it's so lovely speaking to you now, because the last time that I spoke to you, not over WhatsApp, was when we were like, help, what is this? We had none of this last time. I don't know what to do to not have a baby that's sad 24/7. And now we're going to have an Alfie who I'm sure will let us know is really happy and really comfortable. And yeah, your support was such a massive, massive part of getting us to this place. So thank you from my family. And I know there'll be so many families that you have impacted and helped listening today. But it is fantastic to, I think, talk about the topic of uncomfortable babies. And I know that you have lived this yourself. I'd love to hear a little bit, Josie, about what's got you to where you are today and why you love doing what you do.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for having me on, firstly. It's so lovely to see Alfie. I'm actually so pleased that you brought him, because I think one of the best parts of this job is receiving a video or a photo and hearing actually, here's my baby now. So how did I get to where I am now? I think I had a little boy in 2021, so we were at the very end of the second lockdown, which I'm sure undoubtedly played a part in my experience. But I'm always quite clear in the fact that actually it was quite a small part in the end. So it didn't, control what happened with me or Otto, my little boy. Unfortunately, Otto was born early, in quite traumatic circumstances in terms of the fact that we both became incredibly unwell during the process of Otto being born. He ended up in intensive care. I ended up in hospital. We were both there for a good few weeks. And so I think when you have an image in your head, which even if we don't want to acknowledge, we all do when we're pregnant, we have an image of going home with the baby or doing lovely things with the baby, whether it's your first baby, your second baby, your third baby, I don't think it actually matters. I think you are going through this pregnancy with a hopeful image of the fact that you will go home and things will be great. Not necessarily easy, but great. Images of your other children meeting that baby, going to baby groups. And I went through that pregnancy relatively blindly, I would say, in terms of even though the pregnancy wasn't necessarily easy, I could see the end point. And so after it had initially gone a bit wrong, going home still felt as though, well, I've been in hospital for a few weeks, so everything that could be wrong with my baby, I should know about and nothing could have been missed. And we've had or should have had kind of the best care possible. And so, actually, even though I've probably got a lot of trauma to deal with, I can go home and enjoy my time with my baby now. The reality of that was that actually I took home a baby who, having been pumped full of IV antibiotics and tube fed and then bottle fed various formulas in that time and not had not been with me an awful lot. So actually I hadn't had that time to get to know him. We actually ended up taking home a really, really uncomfortable baby who then, when he got to term and woke up a little bit, became a very, very unhappy baby. Um, and so I think looking back, what I now see is that a bad experience became an unnecessarily awful experience, really, due to, in part, absolute lack of awareness on my behalf of the fact that any of the things that had happened to us could lead to a really uncomfortable baby. And actually, I feel if I had just known, if I had been prepared in any way or supported in any way, yes, I wouldn't have been able to stop it from happening, but knowledge is power. And I would have at least understood what was going on and been able to come up with solutions.
Mm, so powerful, isn't it? Because you're so right in everything you've just said in that vision that you have. And I I totally resonate, Josie, because I suppose with my first son, Finley, he was a comfortable baby. So
Yeah,
I thought that was what we were having again, right? Like, why would I think differently? Everything was the same. They were born in the same room, in the same pool. Like, it was so the same. And
yeah,
then Alfie just wasn't comfortable. And then obviously we had the meningitis and all of that medication that you were sort of talking about with your son that was then pumped into him. And I remember when I first spoke with you and I was like, he's got reflux, and you were a bit like, but why? And I think it was the first time that I felt, and I think I've said this to you already, but I actually felt listened to. Because when I'd been to the GP and I'd seen my health visitor, I'd spoken to people, and it was always, oh yeah, but he's gaining weight and he's fine and he's having regular poos and I was like, yeah, he's gaining weight, but he's not fine. Like, and I remember my husband being like, he's just in pain all the time. Why is he in pain all the time? Like, why is my son constantly in pain? Maybe we need to stop breastfeeding. Maybe we need to do this. Maybe. And it was like, it's just constantly, in whatever we do, he's in pain. And it was the first time that you were like, no, that's not okay. Great, he's gaining weight. That's a complete side thing. Actually, this is an uncomfortable baby. And I think that's a term that feels to me, having gone through this and having worked with you, feels more helpful than all the other labels of like reflux and colic and all of that stuff. I think uncomfortable baby actually is so much more helpful. But I guess what would you define, or what does an uncomfortable baby look like to you? What do parents that you work with typically kind of report or tell you they're trying to navigate?
yeah. So I think and that is exactly why Heidi and I went, okay, what is this actually? Because I don't want someone to not come to us because a GP has told them your baby doesn't have reflux. Yeah. And it's really important to be clear about that. There is people that will define physical reflux, silent reflux, etc. But actually, when you use the term uncomfortable baby, if your baby is uncomfortable and you can see that, let's try and do something about it. And I think an uncomfortable baby, really, for me, ultimately, is any baby that you can spot is uncomfortable initially. So if any parent said to me, I think my baby is uncomfortable, they have seen something that is telling them that. So I think it's really important to be so clear that there is such a broad spectrum there. If you really wanted to narrow it down, then yes, these babies can cry excessively. And I really do work with parents of babies that are crying for 17, 18 hours a day. And that cannot be underestimated. And I don't think being told babies cry actually cuts it there because no one can cope with 17 hours of crying a day. It's just not okay.
That's a
Um,
whole trauma in itself, isn't it? Like that's
yeah,
a whole postpartum
absolutely.
trauma for sure.
And I really feel, and I'm sure we'll come on to it, but I really do feel that that element of you are ignoring here the trauma that can occur from having to look after babies that are so desperately uncomfortable. It needs to come to the forefront of people's attention because we are leaving mums, dads in situations where actually they are left reeling from the experience of having such an uncomfortable baby. So yes, excessive crying. I would say there's always or nearly always some kind of giveaway in the amount of either wind, poo, or sick that a baby is experiencing. And that can be lack of as well as excessive amounts. So, people will come to me and say, oh, he poos every 8 or 9 days and gets increasingly more uncomfortable as those days go on. And again, that is the body throwing out signs that something's not quite right here. My digestive system is not working as should. Um, so poo, wind, digestive system, crying, arching their back is a classic. These babies are often very tense babies. And again, parents are very often told they're super alert, they were super strong. Haven't they got a strong neck? Um, but actually, if we look at a comfortable baby, more often than not, they are relaxed, and that results in arguably a more kind of floppy posture. Um, Newborn babies at 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks old that are awake for 8 hours at a time and are able to hold their own head up. Uh, I'm going to say that normally that then precedes other symptoms starting to appear. So I think the signs are there, and the signs are everything that deep down I feel a lot of parents know, but they are constantly being told that's normal. They'll be fine. They'll grow out of it. Aren't you lucky to have such an alert baby? Or they don't cry, so it's fine. Or the classic, which you just said, they're putting on weight. And the weight thing is a big one because of course we need babies to be putting on weight. But actually, probably 90% of my clients' babies are putting on weight and tracking perfectly fine, if not excessively, because all they want to do is suck and swallow.
Yeah.
So I don't feel the weight is any indication of how comfortable your baby's gut is.
Definitely. And that was one of the things that I found so unhelpful. Sorry, everyone can just hear Alfie here, just chilling
No,
with us.
it's great.
Um, but that was one of the things that I found so unhelpful because I almost felt because he was gaining weight, I then was completely disregarded and I didn't have a baby that was screaming all the time. But I remember sort of saying to you, it's like imagine if I had IBS, that like just constantly irritated. Like I was like, he's not necessarily screaming for long periods, which is that often that refluxy label. He's just uncomfortable. And so because of that, I felt a bit like almost treated a bit like I was perhaps overreacting. Um, and whether if I hadn't had a baby the first time, maybe I would have just thought babies are like that. But I was just, you just know, and I think that's that parental instinct, whether that's, mums, dads, or whoever, but you know your baby and you often know those signals and what they're trying to say. And actually, if you do feel that there's something not quite right, there probably isn't. Like there probably is something
Yeah.
that needs help. And what you were saying about, oh, isn't your baby strong? I remember our six-ish, 8 weekish GP check, exactly that, oh, he's so strong. And I felt at that point, I think you'd already connected us with Laura, the lovely osteopath, who was like, oh, he's so locked, like his head was completely locked,
Yeah.
which obviously the meningitis wouldn't have helped either. But yeah, it was like it's because you can't move. Like it's not
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
good strength. He's just
Yeah.
so tight that you can't look left at all.
Yes.
But again, it's like, oh, everyone looks for your baby being able to lift their head up. So, oh, that's great. They can lift their head up. They're really strong. Actually, what's normal?
Hmm.
What's that actually showing us, and how is that mobility? Because, like you say, when a baby's relaxed, they should be able to flop their head.
Yeah. And I think the what you touch upon there, Pip, in terms of being dismissed,
Mm.
if if there is a reason that I am so passionate about what we do, it is that it is this dismissive tone that so many professionals take with parents of young babies. And I have a huge issue with it because actually I think it's an incredibly risky thing to do of with a parent that has a young baby and is going through so many changes themselves. Even if they've had a baby before, a new baby changes family dynamic. There are hormones at play, there is the birth experience at play. All of these things, I cannot tell you how many parents I talk to who have been dismissed in a certain appointment within those first few weeks or months and actually never go back. They will never go back. So even though weeks later, they absolutely know now that their baby is not comfortable and there is really something going on, they have been totally knocked by that that experience of being told basically you're fine. And it isn't good enough in that situation. It isn't good enough. And I think regardless of whether we know what is going on, and you may go to a GP appointment and actually completely understandably that GP may not know what is going on. They cannot know everything about everything. But there is a difference between not knowing and caring and then dismissing someone.
And then it becomes dangerous, right? Because then
Yeah.
you're worried as a parent that you seek a support around that or something else that crops up later on because no one wants to be a burden. No one wants to feel like that, that flappy mum. But yeah, that instinct is so powerful. And I guess why do you think, Josie, why do you think there's such a kind of lack of understanding and support around uncomfortable babies? Because I do feel like so much has been almost normalized in some aspects as well, whether that's because it's so common, perhaps. I don't know. But why do you think there is such a lack of knowledge and help out there for parents? Because it's really, really tough. And I had no idea how tough it would be until we were in it because you're more sleep deprived. You feel this like awful guilt that you can't fix it. No one wants their child to be uncomfortable. You can't get to the root cause. And then when you don't feel like you've got people helping you either, it's like you're trapped. Where'd you go? It's really hard.
Yeah, no, and undoubtedly, I think there will be a time. If we were having this conversation in another 10 years, I truly believe that education in pregnancy, those leaflets we get given and the conversations we have with our midwives or our NCT group or whatever it may be, um, I truly believe that baby's gut health will be discussed, and actually that postnatal period there will also be support around it. I do think there is always a delay in research and then care. We know that. I also think really, really factually, there is probably not the funding for it at the moment. We are losing support and losing services instead of gaining them. Um, but I also think we're missing the fact that society has changed. So we have everything so readily available now that if we think there is a problem with our baby, they're not comfortable, instead of knowing who to go to or discussing it with people, pausing, finding out your knowledge, and then making a decision, because that process isn't available. We don't live in extended families. Quite a lot of us don't even speak to our friends every day. We're busy, we're working. Our auntie and our grandma aren't round the corner. We just go to the supermarket and make a rushed emotional decision to just buy a different type of formula, or to cut something out our diet, or try holding baby in a different position for 5 hours a day. And then when it doesn't help, you only have yourself to go, well, that didn't work. I'm a rubbish mum. I don't know what I'm doing. And actually we are left on our own very often, but with the accessibility to make all of these kind of rushed, rash decisions because we're just desperate for our baby to be more comfortable. So actually, in part, I think stuff is too available for us. But I also think the support systems around new parents have now fallen. And it's not in a good way, is it? There's no, I don't think anyone could say to us right now, actually, if someone has a baby, they get offered absolutely every element of help and knowledge that they need. That isn't the case at the moment. We know research shows us that babies' guts are not as strong as they used to be. So that is also just another fact, an element of the fact that, is it becoming more common? Probably. We exclusively breastfed babies' guts now carry less bacteria than exclusively bottle-fed babies did hundreds of years ago. So we know environmental factors, the way we live our lives, the food we eat, they are all contributing, but there should be support systems and knowledge in place that allows parents to then make informed choices.
That is fascinating. That difference in society. And I think, what you were saying about that gut health and that knowledge changing care and becoming more available is so important, isn't it? So important because we
Yeah.
know that the gut health of our children stems from us in pregnancy. And I think it's nice for parents to know that there is things that are within their control. There's always things that aren't, of course, and we have to lean into that and be accepting of that. But like you said, I think that knowledge becoming to the forefront is, I mean, like it's just got to happen because the studies are happening. There is evidence out there that we're not actioning. And I think that's disempowering to women at such an important time where often we are at our most receptive to health education in pregnancy because
Yeah.
we know we can't always prioritize ourselves, but my goodness, mothers prioritize their children. So it's so I just think that's fascinating and it shows that change in society. And like, we talk quite often on the podcast about how the biological needs of our baby and the societal pressures of mothers are like so far apart now. And for sure that's got to have an impact on our children and their gut health as well and how we manage things. And I remember when I first spoke to you and you were like, okay, so what's he like, what are you doing? What's he taking? And I was like, everything. Like, I've bought everything, every type of probiotic I can try, but also every type of, the gripe water, the Infocal, all that stuff, and Metrazole. I was like, trying it all. And you were
Yeah.
like, okay, so stop that.
Yeah, because, and then this is the thing, and what you say about empowering people, I think there's such a difference, isn't there, between, I think the care system as it stands are very aware that they shouldn't scaremonger, okay?
Mm.
But actually, scaremongering and then giving people the knowledge in order to make informed decisions are two separate things. And this is something that I have reflected on hugely since my pregnancy and birth experience, because wow, would I have made some different decisions if I had had the knowledge?
Yeah.
Okay. They may have felt, but if we tell her that, she might feel a bit scared. But at least if I had been supported, then at least I could then go on to make the decision that I know I have made and I am happy with.
Mm,
So in the same way, the day I left hospital with Otto, and yes, looking back now, I mean, I was like a zombie, but if they had said, look, he's had a lot of medication, this has been your experience, this is what we know about gut health from here onwards, would I have ignored them? Definitely not.
no.
And would I have gone, okay, great, I'm going to do a bit of research on that and see if I can start to rebuild his gut health before things get too bad? 100%. And there's a huge difference, and knowledge empowers people to then feel as though they are at least making some change for the better.
Yeah, 100%. I talk about this with regards to birth. I often say it's prepare, not scare.
Yeah.
Like we are adults. Like we aren't children that need protecting. We need supporting, we need nurturing, but we need honest transparency because we are adults and we deserve to know the realities that other people know about us and our journeys. Talk to me, Josie, about some of the common causes of uncomfortableness, if that's the word, in babies, because we've kind of mentioned, I suppose, perhaps with both of our boys, the medication, antibiotics,
Yeah.
which, have a very necessary life-saving role in society. Um, but what is the impact of those and what other things can cause a baby to then display uncomfortable symptoms?
Yeah, no, and I think with the medication one, like you just said, it is, I would not question for a minute that Otto had that medication. There is necessary causes for those medications. But that again comes down to the knowledge is power. We're not going to say no, don't give it to my baby, but we're going to say yes, give it to them and make them better and save them in Otto's case, and then I will do what I need to do with that knowledge. So yes, medication, and I think the medication comes into play with the fact that it it causes the gut to lose good bacteria faster. So there may be other elements involved, which I'm going to touch upon. So things like oral function, air intake, diet. And by diet, I do mean formula as well as what mum may be eating. But where those things may be slightly irritating the gut, or the gut may be struggling with some of those things, medication is going to accelerate the process of the gut starting to become irritated. So, very often, the baby still would have had an element of gut dysbiosis, or you would have seen some symptoms of the baby struggling. But then you go, then really, really awfully, they got meningitis or they ended up in hospital with bronchiolitis and they had this medication. And when we came home, things were 50 times worse. It exaggerates what was probably happening more slowly. In the same way, there are lots of women and very young babies who are exposed to an element of antibiotics at some point in latter pregnancy, the birth process, or the very first few days. And again, it comes down to just knowing that there is a chance that that medication may cause the gut to just go, oh, I was just starting to gain some strength. I was just getting used to being out in the big wide world. And all of a sudden I'm being given something that is a strong drug going into a very immature gut. So again, it isn't us saying, don't give medication or medication is bad. It's just being truthful. Everyone knows this about medication. It is a fact. Adults can go on a strong course of IV antibiotics and suddenly notice that they can't tolerate certain foods or they've got a really bad tummy. It just happens, but it's about knowing that and then being able to repair it. So I think medication undoubtedly plays a part, but it's important to understand which part. Um, Diet, I find a really contentious one, and me and you were discussing this a minute ago. So I think diet does play a part, and I think where formulas are concerned, like I touched upon earlier, they are so readily available now that it is more important than ever that actually there is a transparency around what formula is designed to do what and why, because they all have their place and they will all suit different babies for different reasons. But it's the understanding of what they're designed to be doing and whether that's going to suit your baby. And actually also how long you need to wait to see whether that is working. Because I mean, I speak to people who have literally changed formula every other day for 2 weeks. You've lost your baseline. You have no way of measuring what is going on now. And I guess in terms of breastfed babies, that is reflected in the way that women will become desperate and will cut out dairy, but then don't see an instant change. So 2 days later, dairy will be back in, and then they'll cut something else out. And you end up with either someone who has no idea whether anything has helped or not, or in worst case scenarios, people who are literally surviving off steamed chicken and broccoli because they don't know what's causing what. So actually, they've cut everything out. And that is not where we want to end up at all. And I think it's really, really important that that doesn't happen because there is very rarely a need to actually be cutting more than a very few foods in people's diets. And like you experienced, when you get the right thing and you know other factors have been removed in terms of you're not just trying everything and hoping for the best, you have this true baseline to measure. And when you put that food back in, so in your case, it was dairy with Alfie, you were instantly assured that that is absolutely a contributing factor to his discomfort.
Yeah,
And I think,
like markedly. But I think for me, Josie, I think if you'd given me all the knowledge and explained everything that you've explained to us, that I hadn't had the support alongside, I would have found that so much harder. Excuse me. We're talking about how comfortable you are. He has just done a poo. That might explain it.
oh,
But
bless.
yeah, I think if you had given me the knowledge but without the support piece, I would have found it so much harder to implement. I
Yeah.
think the two together is what parents desperately need.
Yeah, and realistic, I don't like the word dead timelines, realistic timelines. So I've literally spoken to someone this morning that is really struggling. Baby's gone backwards a bit. She thought she'd kind of sussed it and we'd worked through some things. And I have said, okay, you've slightly lost your baseline here because you've thrown a few things into the mix. So let's go back to basics and let's speak again on Friday and we will have our answer by Friday because we are going back to basics. And actually, you can instantly hear the relief because Friday, okay, well, it's Tuesday. So that's only 4 days away. And Josie is then saying we either need to take route A or route B according to how baby is by Friday. But when you're left on your own with this puzzle to unpick, you drive yourself crazy, you go round in circles. And actually, quite often, you're never going to get to the bottom of it because you don't understand what you're trying to unpick.
And I think everyone's gonna hear lots of mouth, you know. And I do think as well, it's that, like you said, it's that understanding. And sometimes I guess getting to the bottom of that uncomfortable nature, it just does leave you desperate. And I can totally see why parents will just throw everything in the kitchen sink at it because you are just desperate, aren't you? And
Yeah.
you're just desperate to get them better, to be able to thrive, to have the experience, like we said at the beginning, that you dreamed of. And to have that taken away is really tough. Plus the guilt of seeing your child uncomfortable. Like that's just not what anybody wants.
Yeah, and I think also, Pip, I think it's really important to highlight in this that yes, mums are obviously very often or the person that is at home all day kind of trying to unpick this, but I work with an awful lot of couples where actually the partner is becoming hugely burdened by the desperation to get their baby better because without seeing some progress, one person is trying to unpick what's going on with the baby and maybe stopping taking quite such good care of themselves in that process. And then the partner is trying to pick that person up and get their baby better and doesn't want to go out to work in the morning because they know they're going to come home to a desperately sad situation, really. And so it's so narrow-minded of professionals to think that you can just say, they'll grow out of it, you'll be okay, they're just a baby, because there are so many people being affected in these processes. And going back to what you said about contributing factors and why I think society is not necessarily supporting these uncomfortable babies at the moment, I do think the growing out of it issue is also a big factor because, yes, undoubtedly, at some point, these babies will grow out of it. Weeks, months, sometimes, I work with 18-month-olds, so 1, 2 years down the line, you're not going to find a 5, 6, 7-year-old who is still screaming, crying, bringing up sick and struggling to poo. But actually, do you find babies that had reflux that do become children that struggle to digest sometimes? Yes. But telling someone that they will just grow out of it when they are only 2 weeks old, it is not, it's not good enough because you are leaving someone to go, okay, only a few more weeks, only a few more months. They'll get to 6 months, they'll wean. Weaning won't go well. I thought it was going to be better at this stage. And actually, whilst this timeline goes on, you have someone whose well-being is drastically decreasing because that is hard. It is hard to just go on and on and on with the only hope being one day they will grow out of it.
And to not be able to enjoy
Yeah,
like that baby time. Like these days are so precious and
yeah,
you know, yeah, it saddens me that actually, and I guess I had that stark contrast because Finley was so comfortable and, in inverted commas, easy in that aspect. And then we had a curveball and we were like, oh, this is very different. This is not what we expected. This is not what we were intending for anybody. And it affects, it affects other siblings as well. If there's always a crying baby around, like that's
yeah,
not nice. Like for Finley, that was just annoying. Like it was annoying to hear Alfie crying all the time. And he'd be like, Alfie, stop. Alfie, be quiet.
yeah,
Rather than, that bonding that they've now got. And the growing out of it is so interesting. So our I guess our plan before we were connected was through our GP, who's an amazing family GP. I'm not knocking him at all. Like we're really blessed that we live in a little village and we all have the same GP and we can get a same day appointment and they'll, phone us and that's incredible. But our plan was we were on a omeprazole, which, and again, I know is, I'm not anti-medication. It's got a place for some babies. It wasn't really making any difference to Alfie, but we just hoped it would. So we kept going with it. So we were on omeprazole and the plan was stay on omeprazole. We can keep up in the dose if we need to until we wean and then hopefully he'll have grown out of it. Like that was exactly our plan. And now here we are, we're 4 months. So we would still be in that plan. We'd still be taking omeprazole up in the dose that wasn't making any difference. We'd probably still have an uncomfortable baby because we've now found the cause and we wouldn't have addressed any of those and we haven't weaned yet. So we would still be in that really hard time. The contrast is Alfie isn't on any medication and is absolutely happy and thriving and comfortable and we're having a great time and he's got a beautiful bond with his brother and it's a completely different setup that to be honest in those days felt completely unachievable.
yeah.
Um, but actually it can be different and so I think I just want parents that perhaps are in the depths of uncomfortable baby days just to know that it actually really can be different. It's not just something to put up with until, like you say, one day suddenly it's all better.
Yeah. And I think what you just said about weaning is so interesting because we all know that you get told a lot, wait till weaning or wean them early. And I work with a lot of clients who have spent a lot of money on private pediatricians who also get told to just wean early. Now, if you go back to the fact that diet is one of the main contributing factors that we see in one way or another, this idea that at weaning something will magically get much better, it actually makes no sense at all because these guts are irritated, they're unhappy, something is not quite right. The balance is off. Gut dysbiosis, the balance is off within their gut. So to suddenly say that at 6 months, for a lot of people, that is like to the day. So it's like something changes overnight. They are suddenly going to eat all these fruit and vegetables and this varied diet that we, work our way through the weaning books with or whatever it may be. And their gut is going to cope with that. But more than just cope, all of a sudden they're going to be better. It is actually crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And again, it's that false hope. For me, it's false hope because you've just said you would be another 2 months away with a baby that's on medication, which, yes, it absolutely has its place, but you didn't really know what it was doing, or it wasn't really doing anything in Alfie's situation, waiting for that 6 month mark, thinking or hoping that within the next few weeks after weaning, everything would suddenly change. And if I was to track my kind of client intake, one of the moments that a lot of people come to me on the more probably the kind of more low level reflux side of things. So they've been those babies where something's not quite right, but they don't really cry. And so you've just muddled through. And then you've weaned because that has been your marker. And by 7 months, I get a big cluster of clients at that age because they have gone, actually, weaning really also hasn't gone well. And that was my marker. And now I really feel lost.
Yeah. Yeah, like that would hope that would be us. Like it would just be us. And I'm like, if I can fall into that trap, as an educated person with, loads of resources and I understand the gut health evidence. Like Alfie was on probiotics before the meningitis stuff,
Yeah.
and it's something I'm really invested in myself in pregnancy. And I can fall into that trap. Like, so everyone can, right? I
Yeah.
can see my story replicated in so many different ways and so many different scenarios. And I know that's what you live and breathe ultimately.
Yeah.
So it's just letting people know, isn't it? Like it really can be different. And there's a reason why we don't wean at like 3 or 4 months, like we did, me, that I was, that was generationally, that's what happened, wasn't it? Weaning was 3 or 4 months. And we know that that's not great for gut health in infants. So if you've got a child that's got a compromised gut health, bringing weaning forward, like is so often recommended, like you say, is completely nonsensical. Like
Yeah.
that is not this, it's not the solution at
No.
all.
And when you have these conversations with people, they go, I was, deep down, I was questioning that, or I did think, but we have, especially, I think, in this country, we have this hierarchy of, well, they've done medical school and they told me to do it, or
Mm.
they were the health visitor and they told me, any kind of title that means you are the professional and you know what you're talking about, or
Yeah.
you should know, or as a parent. And actually, I think more the issue is as parents, we are led to believe that those professionals should know what they're talking about. But as I said earlier, the honesty needs to be, I don't have a lot of expertise in that area. So you may be right, but I'm not the person to talk to.
Yeah.
That's a much better place to leave someone in
Yeah.
than false hope or misinformation.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think that's the crux of it, really.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. And letting people know that like there are other things available. There are people,
Yeah.
thank goodness, like Josie, that can scoop us up. Now, Josie, everyone that comes on the podcast, I always ask for 3 top tips. So I wonder if you could share with us your 3 top tips. Yes, Alfie. To parents who are navigating an uncomfortable baby.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think they will be any surprise from what I have said, but we will do it. My 3 top tips. Number one, take time after you have your baby. Get to know them, get to know how you're feeling, get to know what they are like. And if you feel that something isn't right, truly believe in yourself and have faith that you may have spotted something that if others can't see, that's fine. You go and speak to someone else and keep pursuing that line of inquiry. Number two, focus on feeding and winding. And the reason that I have given this as a top tip is very, very often babies with uncomfortable guts will be giving some kind of clue in the way they feed. But that can look like wanting to excessively feed because they want to suck, swallow, suck, swallow, suck, swallow. So this isn't about, oh no, they've got a good latch. That's all fine. I'm zooming in on feeding as a much bigger area here, just to give clues as to what may be going on. I think it is missed as an area to focus on. And then number three, knowledge is absolutely power as a parent. If you think something is going on, before making a million changes and just grabbing everything off the shelf, find someone who can give you all the knowledge you need in order to then make informed choices about what you're going to do. It can make all the difference as to how you feel as a parent when you are then on the journey to trying to make your baby more comfortable.
I love that. And I think for us, one of the values of having you in my pocket when we were navigating it with Alfie was having someone to zoom out, like someone that's not in it and not emotionally involved in your circumstance.
Yeah.
As much as my husband and I were like talking and trying to troubleshoot, he's both our children, and we were so emotionally involved. We need someone on the outside to be like, what are we doing? What's actually happening? And taking that like helicopter view almost
Yeah.
was, I think, a real powerful change for us in our journey. So thank you for coming on the podcast, but also, thank you for all of your support with our little man. It's definitely, it's just made such a big difference, and
No,
allowed us
thank
all to
you.
thrive.
It's so lovely. And I think it is achievable for, in different ways on different levels. Every baby is uncomfortable for a different reason, but achieving some kind of change and a little bit more comfort for your baby is achievable. But knowing why you're doing it and how to do it is so important. So I'm so pleased that he's not cried once this whole podcast. It's been
Mhm.
amazing.
We've
I
had a
mean, there's
little
been a
bit,
lot of
but
jigging
yeah,
and
to be fair to him, he's done a big poo.
exactly,
Done a big
exactly. And
poo,
when we
and
first
he's ready
spoke,
for a
he
nap, and he's
was
teething.
huge trauma. He's he's amazing and it's lovely to see. So thank you, Pip.
Oh, thank you so much, Josie. You are an incredible human being.